Unfortunately, we're living in a paradox of mental health. We have quick fix solutions to what we think our fundamental needs are. So we've been told we know what we need connection, but instead of connection, we've kind of created a society which breaks down connection and artificially inseminates connection in all ways, shapes, and forms, whether that's through social media. So you no longer have phone calls or face-to-face conversations and actual intimate connections. Instead, you keep in touch by just seeing pictures and videos and breeding a bit of jealousy rather than connection with the people you truly love, or breeding a bit of judgment with people rather than actually connecting to them. Or if you're craving emotional intimacy with the opposite gender or with the same gender or with partnerships, you have dating apps which kind of sever the investment required for relationships because everybody becomes disposable. Everybody seems like, we judge them as shallow and superficially. And even just everything in life, we're supposed to practice the arts of, in order to breed connections, you need skills like investment, patience, commitment. But we've got fast fashion, fast food, deliveries, everything that's creating impatience in a human being, which then we take that skill and apply it to human connection, which essentially means if someone doesn't meet our needs initially or immediately, we replace them. And as a result, we've got an epidemic of loneliness.
We have this biological need, obviously, that's evolved for human connection. So many of these things. And like we're just speaking to, modern society is giving us these quick fixes, but that give us that momentary sense of dopamine or satisfaction, but doesn't ultimately fulfill us in the way that we need to have a healthy mind and healthy body and like sustain that for like longevity wise. And so there's many different forms of this through social media, TikTok, pornography that really create the solution to what then becomes a problem. And so when you're a coach working with individuals and you're supporting people that are struggling with that, whether it's addiction to social media, men with pornography or whatever it is, what do you do to help them actually move the needle and then come back into relating with those healthy forms of connection?
I'll be honest with you, I'm struggling myself. Yeah, I will be very honest with it because here's the key problem. Children are addicted to pornography. It's not an adult problem. It's a children problem. So they usually are young, playing video games. So they start with addiction to video games, and that becomes very difficult. And then they see the pop-ups and then they start watching pornography, and by the time they're 18 they've got a full-on addiction, but they don't realize it's an addiction. So you're competing with now their childhood and their complete habits that you can't really compete with. But the main thing it's done to men and women, but particularly to men, is we can all find connection. We think it's really hard, but we can all find connection if we simply like what likes us. If we're simply, look for reciprocity. We want what wants us. We stay within our level. I don't mean that in an insult, but it would be a pointless strategy for me to want like a complete superstar and be like, no, Chris Brown has to be with me. It's not going to happen. But if I stay in my level, somebody who works in a similar industry, somebody who looks similar to me, somebody who is like that, we'll all find partners. But what pornography and social media has done has escalated what we desire in a partner. And as a result, we think we're super lonely. We think there's nobody out there for us. But essentially, there are people out there for us, but we classify selecting people who are on our similar level as settling. And therefore, we keep aiming higher and higher, thinking that the bar is higher and higher. And as a result, we end up lonely when really we could just shift our desires to the people who invest in us and focus our attention there. But we're constantly focusing our attention on things that we've seen online and things that we've seen other people do. And therefore, we lack the actual intimacy and connection, and we don't look for reciprocity anymore. So that's why people are struggling a little bit in that sense.
Yeah, I've always felt that even when I have, some sensations of like lethargy or, rumination in the past, like just simply going in nature, like connecting with
real
soil and like the real world, it's like what we make it to be this catastrophic thing that we need to have an existential solution for, but really like the solutions are so simple and just giving our human biology what it needs.
It's so simple. Like I'll have a man that's addicted to pornography and he's like, I have no luck with girls. I have no luck with girls. And I said, what kind of girls are you going for? And it will be a Swedish supermodel that lives in a different country and he's in his mum's basement. He's not looking after himself. And he's like, those girls don't like me. I'm so lonely. I'm like, but there will be girls that do like you. You just don't want to attach to what is available to you. So what's happening is we're forming artificial connections with people who are out of our league, and therefore we're experiencing continuous rejection, and we're trying to bypass rejection by using OnlyFans or subscriptions or pornography. And as a result, we can't get the human connection, because human nature and human connection requires those emotions like rejection, investment, commitment. And we're skipping all of that and then just getting to the outcome, which is a fake outcome of just sexual pleasure, unfortunately.
So what's the difference between the balance of what men versus women need for self-control and authenticity?
For men and women, I would say self-control, the art of self-control is having a vision. That's all it is. It's not so much being restrictive, but it's understanding where you want yourself to be in the future, visualizing what your outcome of life will look like, and then using that as a motivator to inform your decisions. And what I mean by this is I like food. I enjoy all types of food, but because I might have a vision of how I want my body to look, that long-term vision of where I see myself is a motivator for me not to succumb to my desires right now. Similarly, you might love sex with beautiful girls or so on and so forth, but you want a marriage with kids and you want to maintain that. Not everybody, but some men want that. They want a committed, long-lasting relationship. So you have to control what you currently desire for your long-term vision of yourself. And when people forget their outcomes and their long-term visions, and they forget what in the long term could be worst case scenario. Long term, it could be being really overweight, out of shape, in a really unhappy situation. They forget that that's a real consequence of current decisions. That's how they get into a lack of self-control. But if you just remind yourself that you owe your future self good decision making today, it will enable some good decision making. In terms of authenticity, I think what most, and I think a lot of women are suffering from this, myself included, is we are constantly bombarded of what kind of woman we should be. But before there would probably be one narrative of what a woman should be. Nowadays, it's like you've got so much online telling you that you can be a bad bitch, or you can be a boss, or you should be conservative, or you should be liberal, or you should be. There's so many mixed messages of what a female identity should be that women are losing their identity and kind of molding into whatever's in fashion in that moment. And as a result, they're losing connection with what's truly compatible with them, and they're not finding the right connection. So when they're teenagers, it might be to be a bad bee, then it might become like, oh, I want to settle down, but then there is just no consistency in their behaviors and their morals and their desires, and as a result they get quite confused as they're growing up.